My mother was Jane Leveson. She always told me a lot about her work as I was growing up. In fact, when I was very young, I just presumed everyone had done something similar, but as I grew up, I realised that what she had done was very special. She told me a lot about her work in Germany after the war, how she went into a concentration camp as the first Jewish civilian relief worker. She was actually with a Quaker team, but she wore a Jewish star so that the internees would realise that she was Jewish. She would talk with a great deal of affection about the people she helped. She talked a lot about her experiences in a concentration camp. I think it did have a very deep effect on her. And in fact, I was surprised when she told me that she'd been there for 6 weeks. By the way she was talking, I thought it was longer, much longer. She quite often talk about the people that she'd met. Usually I think she'd concentrate on the funny aspects. She'd talk about how they appreciated her being so fat. In fact, she wasn't fat, but compared to the skeleton-like people you saw there, she was. And yes, there were happy times there, amusing times, but it did have a very deep effect on her. And I think it did cover the way she lived her life. My life, according to my mother, was incredibly easy. I didn't have to cope with the Blitz. I didn't have to cope with a concentration camp. I was born in peace times. And yet there were still things that were going wrong in my life that I would find very distressing. And my mother couldn't really see the problem. Well, you're not being bullied by a Nazi soldier, so. My mother's way of coping was very different from mine in that if she was upset about something, she would try and resist being upset. She would cope with it by telling herself that if the problem was a big one, it wasn't actually a very big one and she was foolish to be upset about it. She would repress whatever she would feel. And the same thing happened when my father died. They'd had a very loving relationship for 40 years. And she was very embarrassed because one of her neighbours just didn't realise what had happened and just said, "Oh, when did your husband die?" And she said, "Last week," and started crying. And she told me how terribly embarrassed she was because she hardly knew this person. She cried in front of him. I actually had to reassure her that it was quite normal. And I think to her, it was just normal that she went away to Belsen. And I can remember talking to one of the ladies who also helped out in her team, Joyce. And I remember I said, "I admire you all so much. I don't think I could even put my little toe inside Belsen." And Joyce just said to me, "Oh, well, if the occasion arose, you would feel obliged to, and I'm sure you'd find the strength." But I think the majority of people my age wouldn't actually understand how people like that manage to find the strength to do all these sort of things.